Hello everyone, welcome back to another video of topic 15 in Edexcel A2 IT Unit 3. Since many of our followers has requested us to do a lesson about how to attempt Gantt chart questions, we decided to break this subsection to a separate video so that you can visit this again and again to refresh your mind and practice the questions on your own. This video is the practical session of topic 15 section 1.5. Therefore, if you have not already followed our learning videos of topic 15 that covers the theory, we recommend you to first go through that video and get the foundation needed to follow these practical exercises, because I'm not doing the theory in this video because I want to do more questions from the past papers on how to fill the Gantt chart. So that will be really helpful for you to get marks in the exam. So before we start the exercise, I thought it would be cool to show you a real life Gantt. Here's a real life Gantt generated using a project management tool. So did you notice that this Gantt chart shows the duration of a task visually by coloring the duration as a bar line from start to end? And also, did you notice that the predecessors has an arrow starting from the predecessor task to the dependent task? We will also use similar visuals in our exercises. So let's go through it. Now, here is an extract from Edexcel A2 marking scheme. Uh, it shows how the examiner expect the Gantt chart to be drawn in the answer to get the full marks. So let's talk about few important things that we need to understand as per the marking schemes. The task is indicated as the task number in the first column. This number corresponds to the number assigned to the task in the question. Second column, uh, the constraints column include the dependencies or predecessor task and any other relevant constraints to the task to complete successfully. You need to write them as part of the answer. The next important factor is filling the correct dates a task would be executed using crosses. The columns labeled 1, 2, 3, and etc. are the dates in July for this example. Let's look at the task number 1 row. The project starts on the 5th of July and the first task starts on the project start date while ends on the 9th. And therefore, corresponding cells in columns labeled 5 to 9 in the first row are marked with crosses. So remember, you must use crosses to fill the durations, but not angle lines or color in the box or nothing, right? So these are those are not accepted. Only the crosses are accepted. Next important factor is how we represent the dependencies. An arrow must start from the end of predecessor task and point towards the start of dependent task. See how few tasks are presented here on this Gantt chart with arrows. And then last factor to remember is that overruns or possible early starts must be enclosed with brackets and filled with crosses. You can see that task 4 has an early start on the 10th July that is bracketed. If the early start or overdue runs for more than 1 day, then you open the bracket on the first day and then close on the last day of the overrun or the early start. Don't worry if you are confused now. You will see this how this is done in action when we do the exercises in a little while. So do remember these points since the examiners will mark accordingly. So in summary, mark each box allocated for days with an X. Overflows or early starts must be bracketed. Dependencies must be shown with arrows, ignoring the overflow of predecessor task or early start of the dependent task. So let's now look at question 2 in the June 2022 exam paper. So let's go through the question. An engineering company is moving its computer center to new premises and must ensure that all its data will be available at the new location. The project manager has drawn up this task list for the move. So let's look at the task list. Right. So this is the task list given with their due dates and other notes to consider. It has the task ID, task description, completed by when, and then notes for each task. And this is what the question is asking us to do. Create a Gantt chart in the grid for the task listed. You should assume that the company works 7 days a week. Your chart should indicate any dependencies. Your chart should indicate any constraints. And you're getting 6 marks for this question. Okay, so before we move to the Gantt chart, I want to mark the predecessors by analyzing what is given in the task table. I have added an extra, like you can see in a different color. This is the extra column that I'm adding end of this task list. But you can do this directly on the question paper using a pencil. So these steps helps us to draw the Gantt chart faster and so that you won't miss anything as well. First, let's find what the starting tasks are. There must be at least minimum one task starting task, or sometimes there could be more than one. So in this question, task 1 and 3 has notes indicating that both those tasks starts on the 5th of July. You can read the task number 1 and 3, and under notes it says starts 5th July. Uh, and but the notes does not indicate any predecessors or preconditions to start these two tasks. Therefore, task 1 and 3 are the starting activities for this project, and therefore there's no predecessors for them as well. Task 2 is about reserving additional cloud storage space. So it implies that they already have a cloud or storage space but want to increase because it says additional storage. So, what do you think helps the team to decide on how much space to reserve? Yes, for them to know how much space to reserve to accommodate all files for 1 week, they must complete task 1. Task 1 is to review and test the existing data files and backups, and that task will find how much of space needed for a week's backup. So, I have marked task ID 1 in the predecessor column of task 2. Let's go to task 4. It says that hardware must be in place for the backup software to be installed. So task 3 is a predecessor for task 4, that is an easy pick, right? And then task 5's note says that it can only be done after the review and testing, which is task 1. But here I have also considered the total cloud space needed. So we can start moving the files to cloud because we already have some cloud storage available. But for us to complete all the backups movement to cloud, we need the additional storage we reserved in task 2. So therefore, I decided that predecessors of task 5 are both task 1 and 2, while task 5 can start as soon as task 1 is completed on the 9th July. Now to task 6, this is a milestone activity or a verification step that project manager must do as per the notes given for task 6. So it does not have any predecessors, or it's not a predecessor for any other task as well. So that's why it's blank. Task 7 is an interesting task since that represent the cutover from old location to new location. The team will be stopping activities on the old location by end of day on the 15th July and start using new location on the 16th July. So that's why the note says that task 7 must be completed on the 16th July. So for task 7 to start, we know that the new location must be ready with the hardware and software installed. Hence, task 7 is a predecessor. Task 7's predecessor is task 4, which is to install software at new location. And then task 8 is about user testing and adoption of new system for mass usage. For that for that activity to start, task 7 must be completed, and therefore task 7 is the predecessor of task 8. So now we can go and fill the Gantt chart given in the exam paper. Here's a gun chart that is identical to the one given on the exam paper. The cells marked in gray background are the ones pre-printed on the paper, and everything else is what you need to fill in. First, you have to fill in the constraints. These are not just the predecessors, but any other constraint of importance. For an example, check task 6. That verification task must be performed only by the project manager. Therefore, the PM's availability is utmost important and a constraint. Once the constraints are filled, let's focus on task and their durations. From our task list analysis, we know that task 1 and 3 are the starting task and does not have predecessors. We also know that both tasks are to be start on the 5th of July and run till the completion due date as given on the task list. Task 1 starts on the 5th and completes on the 9th July, while task 3 start on the 5th and completed on the 10th July. So we mark the Gantt for each of these two tasks as shown with cross icons. We move on to task 2. Task 2 is to be completed on the 10th July and can only start after task 1 is completed, which is on the 9th July. Therefore, task 2 can start only on the 10th July, the earliest. So, task 2 runs for 1 day on the 10th, and since task 1 is a predecessor, I have drawn an arrow from task 1's row to task 2's row. Okay. Okay, this screen. Task 4 need task 3 completed. Therefore, the task can start only on the 11th after task 3 completed on the 10th. But since we know by nature of the two tasks, some hardware could potentially be available before 10th July while task 3 is still in progress. There's a high possibility that task 4 can have an early start by starting to install software on hardware components installed even though the complete hardware setup is not completed. So this is why there is a day of early start indicated on the 10th July with brackets for task 4. The cell of early start is highlighted in yellow as well. Why I'm justifying that hardware may be available beforehand is that task 3 runs for 6 days, which is a substantial duration of the entire project. So, since we need to indicate the predecessor dependencies, I have also drawn an arrow from the end of task 3 to the start of task 3. Do note that we only consider the start of task 3, the usual start and not the possible early start. Possible means there's a change, it could happen and not happen. But in Gantt, for project management purposes, we only consider the certainties and not the uncertainties. Okay, now let's move on to task 5. We earlier identified task 1 and 2 as predecessors for this task. We also know that this engineering company has some amount of cloud storage already and they will increase the capacity by reserving in task 2. So assume that task 5 also can have an early start parallel to task 1 is running, while not necessarily wait till additional cloud space comes through. So I have marked 10th July as the early start date, and the work is to complete by 15th July as per the completion date given in the paper. So early start is highlighted in yellow like earlier for your easy reference. I have also shown with arrows the dependencies from task 1 and 2 to the start of task 5. Task 6 is an independent task that PM attends to and it happened at the end of day of 15th July. So we mark it with an cross, with a X and or cross. Task 7 takes place on the 16th and is dependent on task 4. So we mark an X on the 6th July cell and also add an arrow from the end of task 4 to start of task 7. Coming to the final task, that is task 8. is dependent on the task 7, and therefore it can only start on the 17th, and we add an arrow from end of task 7 to start of task 8. uh, Task 8's notes state that the task will run for 2 days, which is 17th and 18th July, but it can overrun by 2 more days too. So I have indicated the overrun days with brackets on either end of the period of 19th and 20th July. In earlier screens, I used colors to explain what I'm doing in each screen so that you can figure out what I'm saying with what's happening on the screen. Here's the final completed Gantt, how it should appear on your exam paper. I have combined everything that we have done in each screen. So this is the final outcome, and this is how it should appear on your exam paper once you are completed the question. So all the tasks are marked with days, predecessors, and dependencies are shown with arrows. Overflow or early start dates are showed using brackets. So it's done, right? I think it's better to another try another past paper question. So let's see. Okay, this is question 3 in the uh, 2021 October exam paper. So let's go through the question. A garage customizes cars. For example, customization might add different effects on the paintwork, change the wheel size, install an entertainment system. So, when a customer books a customization with the garage, the staff opens a new project. This task list has been completed for a customization project. So, let's see the task list. Okay, so this is the task list given with their due dates and other notes to consider. Now we are familiar with the task list, right? It has a task ID, task description, and when it's due, each task, and notes relevant to each task. And this is what the question is asking us to do. Create a Gantt chart in the boxed area for the task listed. Your chart should indicate any dependencies. Your chart should indicate any constraints. You should assume that the garage operates 7 days a week, and you are getting 6 marks. Now, like we did with the previous question, here too, I'm marking the predecessors on a new column with a pencil. And this question is easy than the previous one because this simply say what the predecessors are in the notes column. If you go through the notes, it says clearly. You don't have to think, it's just what are the predecessors. So let's begin. Task 1 is starting task for this car customization project. Hence, no predecessors. Task 2 note says that it can start only after task 1 is completed, and hence predecessor of task 2 is task 1. Notes in task 3 and 4 says that the two tasks can only start after task 2 is completed. And then task 5 says that it can only start after 3 days of ordering paint or parts. So its predecessors are task 3 and 4. Task 6 note says that he can start only after first parts arrive. Parts arrival is happening in task 5 where they unpack and check. So task 5 is the predecessor for task 6. And finally, task 7 says it can start only after all parts are fitted, which is the responsibility of task 6. So it's the predecessor of task 7. So we are now done with marking the predecessors. Now let's move on to fill our Gantt chart. Here's a Gantt chart that is identical to the one given in the exam paper. The cells marked in gray background are the ones pre-printed on your paper, and everything else is what you need to fill in. First, we go into marking the duration starting with the starting task. Those are the tasks that do not have a predecessor. We have only one task here. So task 1 is the one and only starting task for this project. It's due for completion on the 5th July. But since there's no information in the question to find what the start date is, and since the activity is to discuss with the customer and agree on the plan, we can safely assume that this is a 1 day's work. So we indicate that task 1 will only run on the 5th July by crossing the appropriate cell. You can see that I have put a cross for task 1 on the 5th July. uh, so the task 2 can start only after task 1. So it starts on the 6th and run till 8th July as per the due date state in the task list. So we also draw an arrow from end of task 1 to the start of task 2 to indicate that task 1 is a predecessor for task 2. Now the task 2 is a predecessor for both task 3 and 4. So task 3 and 4 can start on the following day only after task 2 finishes on 8 July. So we can start both tasks on 9 July. Task 3 is due on 9 July, so it can only run for 1 day, but task 4 is due on 11 July, so it can run for 3 days. We mark both tasks on the Gantt chart accordingly with crosses as shown, and we also draw two arrows from end of task 2 to start of task 3 and 4 respectively to show the dependency with task 2. Moving on to task 5, it is dependent on both task 3 and 4. Further, its note states that it will take 3 to 14 days for the parts and paint to arrive. So, the earliest day we can expect to receive parts of paint is 3 days from the earliest ordering date of either of the tasks. So, as per our Gantt, the earliest date we order paint or parts is 9th of July. So 3 days of lead time, that is the time taken to deliver anything ordered. From that's 12th of July. So 9th July to 12th July, it's 3 days. Therefore, task 5 can start on the 12th July, the earliest, and it is due on 25th July. So we mark the cells from 12th to 25th, just like so. There's exactly 14 days between 12th and 25th July, and that match to the notes given stating that it may take worst case 14 days to receive parts. Let's move forward to task 6. We found that task 6 is dependent on task 5, but the notes also says that task 6 can start just after first part arrive. So the first part will arrive on the first day of task 5 where they would unpack and check the part. Therefore, after the first day of task 5, that is 12th July, task 6 is good to start. So we mark the start of task 6 as 13th July, and since the task list in the question says task 6 is due on the 28th July, we mark all the cells in between with crosses like so. We now move to the last task 7, which is to custom paint the car. This can start only after completion of task 6. Since task 6 ends on the 28th July, task 7 can start on the 29th and run till 31st July as per the due date given. However, the note says that there's a possibility for task 7 to start 1 week early. So we have to indicate this early start from 22nd July to 28th July with brackets on the either end of these early start 7 days. I have highlighted these cells in yellow here so you can clearly see that. Do note that the arrow to show the dependency from task 6 to task 7 is placed only to the beginning of the normal start date of task 7 and not to the possible early start on the 22nd. So that completes this Edexcel past paper question. The second paper we discussed two past paper questions on how to fill a Gantt chart. And this is the final outcome looks like in the second question that we discussed. If you go through all the past papers, we have seen a Gantt chart question in every other paper and it's a 6 marker. So it's really important because you are getting 6 marks, and if you correctly fill it, it's an easy question to get all 6 marks rather than on the writing or descriptive questions. So I hope you got the best of this video, and you really need to do these two exercises on your own, plus some more exercises to practice and get used to how to fill a Gantt chart. And I hope this video will help you to get full marks for this type of a question. And all the best. Thank you.